Historically, our economic greatness rests on a simple principle. When the middle class thrives and when people can work hard to get into the middle class, then America thrives.
We all want to think of ourselves as middle class, but we're not.
Middle class America, how would I define it?
Between 100 and 200,000.
People who are between being rich and between being poor.
Regardless of their actual socioeconomic status, if you were to ask a random person on the street, do you consider yourself part of the middle class? The likely response would be yes. Despite the frequent mention of the middle class by politicians, the term middle class lacks consensus in its precise meaning, yet it is universally desired by all. While nearly 70% of Americans self-identify as middle class, only around 52% would meet the criteria based on income. According to the Pew Research Center, families with a three-person household and incomes between $45,000 and $130,000 are categorized as middle income. The Brookings Institute provided a more extensive range, suggesting that a household of three would be considered middle income with earnings between $37,000 and $147,000. Recently, CNBC featured a comprehensive budget breakdown of a couple with a combined income of $500,000 who still perceive themselves as average and identify with the middle class, or at least close to it. You might consider them individuals who may have once aspired to move from middle income to upper income but are now hesitant to categorize themselves as such. Indeed, since 1980, the upper middle class has experienced gains in line with the U.S. economy, whereas income growth in the middle class has fallen behind overall economic growth. This prompts the question, why do many individuals fitting squarely into the upper class still self-identify as middle class? People tend to measure their socio-economic status based on the people directly in their line of sight, which means one person's upper class might be others' middle class. This sentiment is intensified by what is commonly referred to as lifestyle creep, where the cost of living increases in tandem with higher earnings. Items that may have been viewed as luxuries during a middle-class status might come to feel indispensable upon reaching the upper middle class. At the heart of the matter lies the notion that Americans, regardless of their background, were sold on the idea of the American dream, a vision where they could secure a fulfilling job, own a home, and raise children with comfort. However, with the escalating cost of living and shifts in the job market, this dream appears to be slipping further away for numerous Americans. As housing costs rise, it makes you feel financially constrained and hinders the ability to progress to the next level. These concerns are widespread, illustrating why even some in the upper class, those who may be exceeding their financial means, experience a sense of financial unease. In the 1960s and 1970s, a middle-class, single-income household could pay off their home within 15 to 20 years. However, by the 1980s and 1990s, the task became more challenging, requiring two incomes and 25 to 30 years to settle the mortgage. In recent years, and even today, it typically takes an average of 2.5 incomes, and it's increasingly unlikely that the mortgage will ever be fully paid off. The idea of the middle class is deeply embedded in the national identity of the United States, often linked to values like hard work, upward mobility, and economic stability. Most Americans probably feel that it's more socially acceptable to be middle class, or, at the very least, to self-identify as middle class.